In this first episode of the Luminary Luna Beams Podcast, I'll be covering the basics of lunar astrology, as well as other astrological need-to-know information before I officially begin my regularly scheduled content drops. So if you're new to working with cosmic energy and or interested in learning more about what to expect from my weekly content, I would recommend you to stick around. The show begins in
T-minus 60 seconds.
my lovely lights. My name is Chasity, aka the Luminary Luna Beams, and I want to welcome you to my brand new podcast. I'm a psychic medium and astrologer that specializes in spiritual guidance and the paranormal, and I'd like to invite you to join me on this weekly journey into the depths of the collective subconscious with the main topic of this podcast, lunar astrology. If you're interested in learning how you can use lunar energy to manifest your goals, heighten your intuition, tap into the divine cosmic, and overall live a more spiritually fulfilling life, then this is the podcast for you. I have found that by working with the moon's celestial energy has been very helpful along the way in my spiritual journey, and I find it really fascinating how much the moon's lunar nodes affects our day-to-day lives, whether we realize it or not. It has changed my perspective on life and how Earth School really works, and I want to share all of this with you. Tune in as I share information regarding the upcoming lunar phases, the current astrological events affecting the world around us, as well as each and every one of you. You can discover how cosmic energy plays an important role in our own self-discovery and receive weekly horoscope updates written by yours truly along the way. I am so very excited to begin this new journey, and I hope you guys stick around as we can continue to grow and evolve and learn, and I think it's going to be super special awesome. This is episode 0. It is an introductory episode. So I do have some topics that I would like to discuss today. But before I begin to release the main episodes in this podcast, I'd like to set an educational foundation for the topics that we'll be discussing, so my listeners will have some general knowledge regarding the lunar cycle, how it relates to astrology, and an overview of how one's moon zodiac sign corresponds to the day-to-day happenings. I also plan on releasing some bonus educational content regarding astrology along the way, stuff like planets and aspects, and, for example, Saturn's archetypes and other planetary bodies' energy. But in this episode, I'll be discussing some basic astrological topics, terms, including what lunar astrology is actually about, some key concepts, and the moon phases and the meanings. Also, how the moon is represented by each zodiac sign, and a little information about the lunar transit cycle. And I'll also explain how you can look up your own lunar zodiac sign if you're not sure how to do so. So stay tuned for that. Some of you may already know me from my other endeavors, especially from a podcast called Lights at Midnight. It's a psychic paranormal podcast that I produce and host with Emily, the fine art medium, where we cover all things related to the paranormal and psychic abilities. If you haven't checked out the Lights at Midnight podcast, and it sounds like something you'd be interested in, especially if you dig the spooky content, or have questions about some of your own supernatural experiences, I highly recommend you check it out for sure. Currently, we're in the home stretch of season 1, Origins, where we take our listeners on a journey that mimics our own as two psychic mediums, that's both specialize in the paranormal, and we have a divine purpose to shed light on what goes bump in the night. That's the line for the opening for Lights at Midnight, if you didn't know. So if you know, you know. But yeah, this season is jam-packed with over 50 hours of detailed information related to having psychic abilities and the wild things we've experienced throughout our lives. So, and the entities that we've came across as well, dealing with different clients from all around the world, actually. It is a great place to get information and learn if you're just starting out on your spiritual journey and looking for information or validation, really, for your own experiences. Some of the things we share are not very researchable, meaning we give our listeners a ton of information and clarity on things that you can't find in many places or topics that you may not get a lot of information on. It's truly one of a kind podcast, the Lights at Midnight podcast. And I'm taking that big podcast energy and coming on over with the Luminary Luna Beams to share some astrological information with you guys. I'll leave a link in the description box down below so you can check it out if you're interested. But with all that being said, I want to thank you for being here from the bottom of my heart. Your guys' support means so much to me, honestly, and it's what keeps me going. I'm super excited to kick off this new endeavor, and I've been planning it for a little over 6 months now, and I hope I can bring some magic into this podcast for sure. Spirit very much directed me to start this project because I feel it'll be very helpful for those of you that are interested in working with lunar energy. It'll provide avenues of growth, as well as you'll learn more about the inner workings of yourself when you start to work with the energy of the moon. If you would like to learn how you can use lunar energy to manifest your goals, heighten your intuition, make way in areas of creativity, and overall live a more fulfilling life, then this podcast, the Luminary Luna Beams Podcast, is for you. I have definitely found it to be one of the main things that has helped me understand my energetic patterns. As in being an intuitive or a psychic medium, we're still human. We still have our highs and our lows. And when you work with lunar energy and you kind of understand what's going on, it can really help you plan around what to expect. It has been a blessing. So I guess let's go ahead and move on. I would like to discuss a little bit about my background, a little bit about myself and what I do briefly. Again, I am a psychic medium and astrologer. I specialize in the paranormal, spiritual guidance, intuitive healing, and metaphysical product development. That includes things like moon water room sprays, candles. I make jewelry with my Treasure Tree and Company jewelry company. If you're interested, I'll have all the descriptions in that down below too. Over the last 3 years, I have harnessed my intuitive abilities to spread knowledge to those that need spiritual discernment. And I have helped illuminate corners of really some of the darkest, most unexplained paranormal encounters. I have a passion for helping other people achieve a greater understanding in their life's purpose, assisting in the development of one's natural intuitive abilities, and helping others attune to their higher spiritual goals. To mentor and assist those that are seeking the information and validation, I use my intuitive gifts such as visions, spiritual messages. I can experience others' past encounters through their own extrasensory perception. I have a keen ability to remote view long distance locations, as well as people that are seeking healing, because a lot of times that's the big part of the journey when it comes to the paranormal. Done a lot of that. I do possess a strong gift of discernment, claircognizance, which is a clear knowing ability. I can connect to the other side and bring in messages from past relatives and higher vibrational beings to provide guidance and identify areas in the chakra systems that may be in need of alignment and clearing. With those combination of gifts that come from what I believe, the Creator, I do possess a strong connection to divine spirit. I'm super blessed to be able to do this and be the conduit for the divine. I do not do this myself. I definitely have help from the other side. we are like 5 or 10%, and spirit does the rest for sure. My soul's purpose really is to help others grow in their own spiritual connections and discover their own soul's path. I help individuals tap into their natural intuitive gifts, teach people how to protect their energy and themselves, as well as their space, and help identify anything potentially standing in the way of their divine purpose. This really is my passion. It really is. I can't say that enough. I also offer products and services, like I was saying. So if you or anyone you know is interested in an intuitive reading or certain astrological services, I do offer several different options to choose from, and it's at an affordable rate, in my opinion, because some people will be charging quite a bit. They'll beat you over the head. I'm currently building my website too, and it'll be available soon. I've been working on that for a while. It's taken me a little longer than expected, but it's coming. So if you're listening to this episode and it's been a month or two since it's been released, it's probably live. So definitely check the description box down below. In the meantime, though, you can always email me at the Luminary Luna Beams at gmail.com, and I can email you one of my brochures. It has a list of everything I currently offer. And it's, of course, again, listed below. Well, that pretty much sums up everything about me. If you've made it this far in the episode, you are super special, awesome, and thanks for hanging around. It's finally time to go ahead and get into the cream of this Oreo cookie episode, because I've been wanting Oreos like all day. Sorry, I am. If you don't know me from my other podcast, you know I can be a little silly. So first, I'm just going to go over some common terms and definitions. Some of these you will probably know, but we're just going to cover them anyways. There's not very many. First, I'm going to start out with zodiac and the definition. The zodiac is a belt of sky that is divided into 12 equal sections, each of which is associated with a different sign. So, of course, that's Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, your zodiac signs. Next, you have your sun sign definition. The sun sign is the zodiac sign that the sun was in when you were born. It's most commonly used astrological term. We all mostly identify with our sun sign. Personally, I'm a Gemini. What it does, it's basically used to describe your personality and overall outlook on life. Next, you have your moon sign. Your moon sign is the zodiac sign where the moon was when you were born, and it represents your emotions, intuition, and your subconscious, your inner world. Next, we have the natal chart. So it's a chart that's basically created from the moment of your birth. And it's used to basically assess the astrological information or profile from that time. There's so much that can be said about your natal chart. It is very valuable when doing this type of work. So we're going to talk a little more about that. Next, you have your ascendant sign, and your ascendant is your rising sign. So it's called the ascendant or rising, commonly referred to a rising sign. And it is the zodiac sign that the rising on the eastern horizon at the time of your birth. So which zodiac sign, when the sun rose that day on the eastern side, or where it was actually when you were born. And it is a mathematical point. It's said to represent your outward personality and how you present yourself to the world. Then you have your midheaven sign, and your midheaven is the zodiac sign that was at the highest point in the sky at your time of birth. And it's said to represent your life's purpose and career and goals. Then we also have ruling planets. You'll hear that a lot. Each zodiac sign has a ruling planet, which is the planet it's basically said to have the most influence over that sign. So, for example, the ruling planets of Aries is Mars, Gemini, Mercury, Taurus is Venus, Cancer is the moon. We're going to be talking about that super soon because that's coming up in just a couple days. And I guess I can go ahead and tell you the rest of them. Leo is represented by the sun, Virgo, Mercury, Libra, Venus, Scorpio, Mars, Sagittarius, Jupiter, Capricorn, Saturn, Aquarius is Uranus, and Pisces is Neptune. All right, and another term I have is aspects. Aspects are the angular relationship between the planets and your natal chart. They're said to indicate the nature of the relationship between different aspects of your personality. So basically, aspects come in different degrees because the astrological wheel is a circle and it is 360 degrees. And then you have aspects coming in at 30, 60, 45 degrees, 120 degrees, and so on and so forth. We'll definitely do an episode on that coming up because that is where you get the good information. You learn your aspects, you can read your astrological chart. Next, you have your descendant sign. So that is what zodiac sign was in the West when you were born. And your descendant sign is represented by the qualities that we look for in a partner. So this has to do with the type of person that, who is drawn to us and our relationships with people. And let's see, I think I have one more for you guys today. And that is the word horoscope. I think everybody knows what that is, but it is a forecast of a person's future based on their astrological profile. These are just a few of the many definitions that are used in astrology because there's tons, and you'll hear me referring to them a lot basically throughout this podcast and more. So we'll take a little deeper dive into some more later. First and foremost, I need to talk about three things: your sun, moon, and rising sign. You may have heard of these phrases before when looking into your own astrological chart or from another astrologer providing you with your horoscope information. In short, your sun, moon, and rising represents the zodiac sign that each one of these planetary bodies, the sun or the moon, or cosmic mathematical points, again, the rising sign, are at the time of your birth. You can find your own sun, moon, or rising in your natal chart, or there are plenty of good tools online that you can plug in your birth information, which is your time of birth, your place of birth, and your birth date. That'll help you determine the zodiac sign that corresponds with that information. For example, the sun was in Gemini when I was born, the moon was in Cancer, and my rising sign is a Cancer as well. This information provides a deeper look at who we are. The sun is super important. This is why I want to go over it again, because the sun represents our outer world, our nature, and our conscious, everything in light. And the moon governs our emotional nature, or our subconscious, our inner world, intuition, what is in the dark. And this is representative of like dualistic type stuff. If you study this information, it's super fascinating how far it goes. The ascendant or rising sign, it speaks to the energy that we put out into the world, and basically a blueprint of our personality. In this podcast, you'll hear me say, for example, if you're an Aries moon or an Aries rising, when I read off the horoscope, that means that particular horoscope is for you, of course. You technically can follow your sun or rising sign to get horoscopes. If they are different signs, it'll give you two horoscopes. If they're the same, then it'll be like a double whammy. So I'm a Cancer moon, Cancer rising, but for those of you that have two different moon and a sun and I'm a Gemini and a Cancer, so I get the double whammy with the moon and the rising. But my sun sign is Gemini. So I tend to look at both of those, and it just gives me a little deeper picture of kind of what to expect energetically. Next, I'm going to cover the lunar nodes briefly, because the next episode I will be discussing that as we're going through a lunar nodal shift. Yes, it's going to get interesting. The lunar nodes are 2 points in the sky where the moon crosses the ecliptic, which is the sun's apparent yearly path on the celestial sphere. So our celestial sphere. They are called the ascending node and the descending node. And this is your ascending sign and your descending sign, like we were referring to. They're not planets. Again, they are mathematical points. And the ascending node is the point where the moon enters the northern ecliptic hemisphere, while the descending node is the point where the moon enters the southern ecliptic hemisphere. So in astrology, the lunar nodes are interpreted as representing basically our karmic path. The north node is said to represent the direction of our soul's evolution, while the south node represents the karmic baggage we're carrying from our past lives. The nodes are always opposite to each other in the zodiac. So if your north node is Capricorn, your south node will be in Cancer. The lunar nodes move through the zodiac at a rate of about 18.5, 18.6 years. So it completes a whole cycle around the astrological chart. That basically means that it changes signs every 18 months or so. This is what we're coming up on the 17th and 18th of July. The nodes are also retrograde, meaning that they move backwards through the zodiac. So instead of going Aries, Taurus, Gemini, it goes Gemini, Taurus, Aries. The lunar nodes are an important part of any astrological chart. They can help us understand our karmic path and to learn the lessons that we need to learn in this lifetime. The placement of the lunar nodes in our natal chart is said to indicate the areas of our lives where we need to grow and evolve. The interpretation of the lunar nodes is a complex and nuanced topic. There's really no one size fits all. Everybody has a little bit different meaning. The more there's a lot to learn in astrology. So even though it's all interpreted similarly, there's still different astrological or astrology styles to keep in mind. So, you have just tons of different types of systems and methods. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. We done got the basic astrological terms out of the way. I definitely will talk more about the planets again and their meanings in further episodes, but I think that'll suffice for now. So we're going to start off with what is lunar astrology. Lunar astrology is a branch of astrology that studies the influence of the moon on our lives. The moon is the closest celestial body to Earth, and it has a profound, truly, it really does. I feel it energy right now from the new moon. It'll make you sleepy. A profound effect on our emotions, our subconscious mind, and our intuition. And you hear the word lunatic on the full moon. Everybody, you've heard the tale. Everybody that has psychological problems tends to heighten. Well, what it does is it illuminates and uncovers things emotionally, which can send people that are emotionally fragile at a time into lunacy. I'm sure we've all heard that. Moving on. Lunar astrology can be a helpful tool for understanding how our own emotional cycles work and helps us make decisions that align with our inner needs. It can also be used to forecast the general mood of the world, like the energy of the collective, and to plan events that are likely to be successful as it governs the act of manifestation. Working with the moon's energy to manifest your goals is a key way to attract abundance and assist with completing tasks, big and small. Facts. There are some basic things that you'll need to understand, and I'll elaborate on these things further, but know that it's very easy to get started and requires minimal physical work on your part. It is very much a emotional thing or a connection with the divine. So you don't have to do a bunch of the things you've heard about, like moon journaling and moon water. You can do all those things, and we're going to talk about those things for sure. But honestly, it's all about your mindset. I do recommend keeping a moon journal or writing down your goals, but to help, I guess you could say, keep track of your manifestation and just the things you have going on. But it's not necessary, but it does really help. All right, moving on, I want to talk about some key concepts of lunar astrology. First, I'm going to start off with the moon phases. So you have the new moon, the waxing moon, the full moon, the waning moon, and each are associated with different emotional states and energies. Those are the basic four. There are four more in between. And then we're going to talk about the moon signs in the zodiac. So again, each zodiac, we're going to talk about some of the characteristics or traits that if you have, like your moon in Cancer, for example, we'll be discussing that. It basically, governs the set, again, of psychological attributes, emotions, and it can influence how we express our emotions and relate to others, for sure, and how we nurture as well. We're going to talk about the moon's relationship to other planets. So lunar transits, we're going to briefly discuss that. So I have 3 parts that we're going to go over here. The transits, they have a temporary impact on our lives, approximately 2.5 days throughout the lunar month. Basically, that means the moon moves through each zodiac sign within like 28 point some odd days. So that is the lunar cycle. And some of them have stronger impacts than others based on the aspects that are currently happening in the sky versus our natal chart. So the time we were born. It can definitely influence our emotional state and just, cause some things positive and negative to happen, but it's always about your perception. So first out of 3, we have the lunar phases. In lunar astrology, the moon is divided again into 8 phases. We're going to go a little bit into each one of those briefly. The new moon is the beginning of the lunar cycle, and it is when the moon is dark in the sky. Of course, you can't see it, but it's there, kind of, but not. It's time for new beginnings and a fresh start. The waxing crescent moon, as the moon slowly grows larger in the sky during this phase, you're going to experience growth and expansion. Then you have your first quarter moon, which is the halfway point between the new moon and the full moon. And it's a time of manifestation and action, but it's also a time when problems start to arise. And how can you take action to work through those problems? Next, you have the waxing gibbous moon. The moon continues again to get bigger until it gets up to the full moon. And it is a time for creativity and abundance. And I have noticed it's a time for heightened intuition in the gibbous cycle in general, working its way up to the full moon, which illuminates all from the inside out. Of course, it's the brightest phase. And it's a time of completion. It's a time when you start to see the growth. Then you have the waning gibbous. So it starts to shrink, going back towards the new moon, and it's a time of reflection and introspection. The last quarter is the halfway point between the full moon and the new moon, and it's a time of letting go and releasing. And then the waning crescent, as the moon again goes back to the dark moon or the new moon, is time for endings and closures. Does that sound familiar, or an analogy that you can think of to like the growing cycle? That's why you commonly hear the moon cycle referred to planting seeds and, fertility and watching things grow. And I hope that's making sense. And I think it's fascinating. Truly, I do. Also, during the last week, I guess you could say but from last quarter to new moon, it's a good time for banishment too. So I can't wait to get into the different phases and each week, because I'll be covering a phase for each week. So the 4 main ones, new moon, first quarter, full moon, and last quarter. And we'll talk about different actions and rituals you can do per se to help you along the way. So each of the 8 lunar phases is associated with a different energy or emotion. So by understanding the meaning of each phase, you can gain much more understanding about you. Sometimes I've noticed sometimes it's harder, even though you can see other people's emotions, and maybe this is just me, it's harder for me to process my own because I am a busy person. I try to stay busy in this work and, my family and stuff, and it does help me kind of keep myself in check. Also, there are some other special moon phases that occur, for example, like blue moons or super moons that I will discuss later in the podcast. So we'll talk about that. But definitely, I hope to bring you some bonus content. Wink, wink, hint, hint. Next, I have some information regarding each zodiac sign and the meaning of them when they're associated with your moon. So the lunar zodiac. In addition to the lunar phases, lunar astrology also considers the moon signs in the zodiac. Moon signs in the zodiac is a sign that the moon was in at the time of your birth. If you forgot from the beginning of the episode, or if you didn't know, I know a lot of us do, but just in case, by understanding this is foundational for you to understanding your intuition. This is part of what I use for my astrological service, where I help people identify their natural born intuitive gifts. Um, it's one of the most important aspects of your birth chart. It really gives you a pathway into your spirituality. And we're going to go ahead and jump right on in. So, if you were born with an Aries moon, you're passionate, impulsive, independent. You're driven by your emotions, and you're always looking for a new challenge. So I'm not gonna go the pros and cons. Again, this is just an overview, just a little sneaky peek there. And it's good to understand if you're wanting to learn astrology, especially lunar astrology or any astrology, to know what each sign means in each planetary body. There's like 3,000 options. It's wild how much you have to learn to be able to do this. I'm not a pro. I would never call myself a pro. There's people that's been doing this, and I'm not trying to get sidetracked, but there's people that's been doing this for 40 years and they still learn. We never stop learning with astrology. Trust me. All right, moving on to Taurus. So a moon in Taurus is stable, reliable, and sensual. They value comfort and security, and they are always looking for ways to ground themselves. Taurus is earth sign. Gemini. The Gemini moon is curious, communicative, and adaptable. They are always seeking new information and experiences, and they are never bored. I don't know about that, but the mind of a Gemini is always working. I'm speaking from experience. Okay, Cancer moon. So it is an intuitive, emotional, and nurturing sign, and they're deeply connected to their family and friends, and they always tend to want to help others. Next is Leo. Leo is dramatic, expressive, and creative. They love to be the center of attention. They're always looking for ways to express themselves. This is true, but this can be in such a beautiful way with Leo. Sometimes Leos get a bad rap, like some other ones, like Gemini. They say we're two-faced. I don't know about that. I don't know. But anyways, moving on. Virgo. Virgo moon is analytical, practical, and organized. They're always looking for ways to improve themselves and their surroundings, and they are never afraid to put in hard work. The Virgos I've known have been so neat and tidy too in their house, just in general for a sun sign. I'm not sure about moon sign, just saying. Next, we have Libra. Libra is the diplomatic, fair-minded, and harmonious. You know, the scales. They value balance and beauty, and they're always looking for ways to create peace and harmony. Next, we have Scorpio. Moon in Scorpio is intense, passionate, and secretive. They are deeply emotional and intuitive, and they're always drawn to the dark side of life. This is because it's represented by the 8th house, which we haven't got there yet, but we will. Don't worry. The moon in Sagittarius is optimistic and adventurous. They love to explore new ideas and cultures, and they're always looking for ways to expand their horizons. Capricorn, the moon in Capricorn is ambitious, disciplined, and responsible. They're always striving for success, and they are never afraid to put in hard work as well. Very driven, motivated people when it is expressed in a positive way. I've known some Capricorns, one that might be listening to this podcast, and they always work. I swear. All right, moving on to Aquarius. So a moon in Aquarius is independent, original, and they are considered the humanitarians of the zodiac. They're always looking for ways to make the world a better place, and they are never afraid to stand up for what they believe in. Next, we have the Pisces. Well, finally, we have the moon in Pisces. It is compassionate, intuitive, and imaginative. They're deeply sensitive and spiritual, and they're always drawn to the beauty of the world. It is important to note that this is just general. I didn't cover like the positive and the negative, just a little bit of an overview. All right, next we have the lunar transits. In astrology, a lunar transit is the movement of the moon through the zodiac sign. These transits can have a temporary impact on our lives depending on the sign that the moon is transiting in. As I said before, the moon takes about 28 days to orbit the Earth, so it moves through each zodiac sign in about 2.5 days. This means that the moon transits are relatively short-lived, but they can still have a significant impact on our emotions, our subconscious mind, and our intuition. The effects of the lunar transit can vary, though, depending on the individual's natal chart, of course, and however, some general effects that are often associated with lunar transits include mood swings. So the moon is the planet of emotions. It's not surprising that the lunar transit can have some big impact on our mood with that one there. Again, back to the lunatic thing as an example. If the moon is transiting a sign that is associated with emotions such as Cancer or Scorpio, you may become more prone to mood swings during this time. So if you're listening to this podcast when it come out, we have the new moon in Cancer. There may be some emotional things going on. Definitely stay tuned. I'm going to say this really briefly because I'm almost done. I'm going to be dropping the next episode in the next day or two, right before the new moon. So if you want to learn more about that, definitely tune into the next episode. All right. Another thing is increased intuition. So the moon is also associated with intuition, of course. The lunar transit can sometimes lead to an increase in intuition and psychic abilities, especially if you're just naturally overflowingly psychic. You're going to notice things. You might even see more supernatural things around the full moon. If you ever have some type of paranormal occurrence, check the lunar calendar and see what it says. Trust me. All right. Also, and I will add to that, you some people just get gut feelings if they're not extremely or they don't quite own their intuition. They even get gut feelings too associated around these transit. And also too, you have increased activity. Um, so it can sometimes lead to creative inspiration. I noticed that right around for me, the new moon. I'm a new moon baby. I kind of like it. It's really cool because it starts off my month right, and it's up to me to keep it going. I still struggle with it sometimes myself, but I truly believe in it because I've made things happen like Treasure Tree and everything in terms of creativity. Creativity is divinely led, 100%. And again, this can vary based on the individual and other aspects and everything. But if you want some tips, real briefly, for dealing with the lunar transit, just beware of the sign that the moon is in. That'll tell you a lot. So if you know what your moon sign is, let's say your moon sign is Gemini, for example, and your moon sign's Gemini, and then you have a Scorpio or a Sagittarius moon, you may notice it being a little rough because Sagittarius is completely opposite, in opposition of Gemini. So it's like polar opposites. So that can pose little problems. Also, pay attention to your mood and emotions during the transit. It's good to take time to take care of yourself on any occasion, but definitely understanding the lunar transit will help you understand your emotional fluxes. And also, too, you want to avoid making any major decisions during a lunar transit. The reason is there's it's called a void of course. That means nothing will prosper, and it's a very brief time in between switching zodiac signs every 2.5 days. It's called void of course for a reason. So just wait until that transitioning period's over, and it's hours. It's nothing crazy, but there is a certain time of day that things just don't work out. And if you're having if something, let's say you go and you're going to the store, everything's fine, and then you can't get there because you got a flat tire, it'd be interesting to see if it happened during the void of course moon. Things like that are possible with astrology. Mainly, though, and lastly, I guess you could say for this list, use the transit to your advantage. If you're feeling more creative or intuitive during the lunar transit, take some time, explore the creative outlet, and tap into your intuition, because if you sit in the quiet and you listen, you'll hear spirit talking to you once you learn how to identify the different voices. I know that sounds crazy, like voices in your head, but if you are an intuitive person, naturally you may know what I mean. You have your own voice, you have divine whispers, and sometimes you can have intrusive thoughts, and learning the difference between those is super important. So it can be a powerful tool, the lunar transits, and learning how to work with them. Um, definitely, if you can, get a lunar or moon journal. They're very helpful. Lastly, I have how to determine your moon sign. It's really easy to find out your moon sign in this day and age, to be 100%. There's tons of tools online to determine your moon sign. So no more mathematical calculations are needed, or graphs, or charts. Nay, nay. Basically, all you'll need is your birth date, your birthplace, and your time of birth to find this information. And one thing to point out would be, you don't have to have the exact time. You want it as close as possible. You ideally want the exact time that you were born. But a lot of times we're told, if we don't have documentation by like, mom, hey, you were born at 9:30 a.m. If it was a couple minutes, give or take, that's fine. You can go with that. No stress. Just enter that information in and you can find it. I will say that there are different types of astrology, and in certain cases, the type you choose can change the outcome of the natal chart. So I follow more Western astrology. We're going to get into that a little later, but just bear in mind that somebody's chart for you may be different than the one you found online if you're using a different type of astrology. Another way you can determine your sign is if you'd like to reach out to me. I do provide certain astrological services. In the next episode, I'm going to go a little bit deeper into that, because I'm going to be doing some seasonal astrological services, and I'll explain what that means in episode 1, since this is episode 0. And yeah, you can always contact me. All of my information will be in the description box down below. Well, ladies and gents, that is actually all the information that I have for you today. Remember, this is just an introductory episode, so the majority of my content will be covering lunar phases, the astrological events, and the weekly horoscopes, of course. I will do more bonus episodes on content that's more educational and learning. And I want to thank everybody for being here. If you made it to the end, I super appreciate it. If you'd like to go ahead and give me a follow, please do, so you can keep up with the rest of the content that I will be dropping. And you can, if you're not watching on YouTube, you can go check out my YouTube. I do other things there as well. So, until next time, stay lit, stay bright, enough to slay the day and illuminate the night.